Now, just declaring independence doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen, right? Doesn't mean that Mexico is going to accept this declaration of independence, right? Usually this means that there's going to be a war for independence, and that is exactly what's going to happen. President Santa Anna is not going to take this lying down. In fact, he is going to lead a military force there to Texas to put down this Texas rebellion. Okay, but before Santa Anna gets there, you're going to have a couple of early victories for the Texans. Here at Gonzales is going to be one of the first major victories for the Texans, where they defeat Mexican forces. This is before Santa Anna arrives with his army. You have a small number of Mexican forces here at Gonzales who attempt to take back a cannon that was given to the town of Gonzales to fight against Indians. When the Mexican forces found out that Texas was trying to gain its independence from Mexico, they went to Gonzales to take this cannon back. But you have members of the Texas militia there at Gonzales who refuse to give the cannon back, and they actually have a battle with Mexican forces and are able to defeat them. Okay, so this is one of the early victories in one of these skirmishes between Texans and Mexican forces. Another major victory would be at San Antonio, San Antonio being one of the main settlements there in Texas. We can take a look again at the map. Here's San Antonio, and so in 1835 you have a victory there for the Texans. They're able to defeat Mexican forces, and so they will hold San Antonio for a period of time, but this is when you see Santa Anna putting together an army and marching north from Mexico, trying to punish the Texans and to put down this rebellion. And so with the arrival of Santa Anna, this is where you have the famous battle at the Alamo. The Alamo is there in San Antonio, right? It's a mission. The Alamo is a mission. Remember we were talking about the establishment of these religious missions, trying to convert the natives there in Texas. Well, the Alamo is one of these missions that was established there. The Alamo is located right by the town of San Antonio. And so this was the place where the Texas militia would hunker down and settle in for the siege that was to come when Santa Anna and his troops would arrive there in San Antonio, trying to take San Antonio back, right? Because, San Antonio is one of the major settlements in Texas. So, of course, Santa Anna is going to try to come and take that back from the Texans, right? And so this is where you have the Battle of the Alamo. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the reading questions, but ultimately it's going to be a major loss for the Texans. Everyone there at the Alamo is going to either be killed in the fighting or they are executed afterwards, right? Including the famous American Davy Crockett. All right, so a major victory for the Mexican forces there at the Alamo. The Texans are defeated. We'll talk more about the Alamo when we get to the reading questions. Another major battle that took place between Mexican forces and the Texans is going to be the battle near Goliad. We can go here on the map and see where Goliad is. This is where we have the Goliad Massacre. We'll talk about what that is right now. So at the Battle of Goliad, you're going to see Texan forces led by James W. Fannin be defeated and captured by the Mexican army. Okay, they're not captured by Santa Anna directly. They're going to be captured by another Mexican general by the name of Jose Urrea. And Urrea is going to be ordered by Santa Anna to execute Fannin and all of the Texan soldiers that are with him. Okay, and so Santa Anna is going to use a law that was originally designated for pirates, which allowed Mexican forces to legally execute pirates if they were captured. Okay, now Fannin and the Texan soldiers are not pirates, right? They're rebelling against the government, but they're not pirates. But this is how Santa Anna is going to use the legal system to justify his order to execute Fannin and about 400 Texan soldiers. And so eventually this will be carried out, this execution, and this is known as the Massacre at Goliad. And it's going to have some pretty heavy repercussions because after word spreads about this massacre, right, of James W. Fannin and his 400 soldiers, you're going to have a lot more support coming from the United States for the Texas Rebellion. Okay, you're going to have a large amount of supplies as well as volunteers coming from the U.S. into Texas to fight on the side of the rebels, right, of the Texan rebels. And so maybe it wasn't the smartest idea of Santa Anna to execute Fanon and his soldiers there at Goliad, because now this is going to galvanize support coming from the United States. So you got more men plus fresh supplies. And so this is going to eventually lead to a defeat of Santa Anna, president of Mexico, and his Mexican forces at the Battle of San Jacinto. And so the Battle of San Jacinto, this is going to be a major victory for the Texans, whose military is led by a man named Sam Houston. Houston and his forces are actually going to catch Santa Anna and the Mexican military off guard, and they will defeat them at the Battle of San Jacinto in a very short period of time, in under a half hour. And so Santa Anna will initially escape, but he'll be captured a couple of days later. And so that means that the Texans actually have the Mexican president in their custody, right? They capture Santa Anna, defeat his military at the Battle of San Jacinto. And so this is pretty much going to bring an end to the war for Texas independence, because, they captured the president, right? Now it's time to sign some treaties. And so Santa Anna is actually going to sign 2 treaties. These are known as the Treaties of Velasco with the Texans. Okay, and so Santa Anna is going to agree to these 2 treaties. One will be a public treaty, right, which everyone will know about, and then there is a secret treaty that Santa Anna signs, a secret agreement with the Texans. Let's go over these 2 treaties of Velasco. So the public treaty, first of all, Santa Anna agrees to stop all hostilities with Texas. He's going to pull out the Mexican army from Texas. They're going to completely evacuate Texas, and there's going to be an agreement to exchange prisoners on both sides. Okay, and so this is the public treaty of Velasco. It ends all hostilities between Mexico and Texas. This means that Santa Anna is not going to just come back with another army and try to, stop the movement for Texas independence, right? It's going to end all military activity there, and the Mexican army will leave Texas. So that's the public treaty of Velasco. Now, the secret treaty that Santa Anna signs is basically where he negotiates his release. Okay, so he's not going to stay in the custody of the Texans. The Texans will agree to release Santa Anna and give him transportation down to Veracruz, but in return, Santa Anna has to agree to accept a Texas Peace Commission in Mexico City, where they would negotiate the terms with the Mexican Republic, with the government, for Texas independence. Okay, so basically Santa Anna is agreeing to recognize Texas independence and to accept this peace commission that would come from Texas to Mexico City to negotiate the peace with the Mexican government. All right, and so in exchange for this, Santa Anna would be let go and be given transportation to Veracruz. Okay, and so this is how Santa Anna is able to leave the custody of the Texans. But when Santa Anna returns to Mexico, members of the Mexican government are very upset that he signed the treaties of Velasco, right? And so the government, the Congress, they refuse to accept a peace commission coming from Texas. They refuse to recognize the independence of Texas. And Santa Anna, who's trying to save his political clout there in Mexico, he is going to make the argument that he signed these treaties as an individual, right? Not as a representative of the Mexican government. Okay, that's his argument. He's like, I was just signing it as an individual for my release. I wasn't acting as president. The Mexican Congress would also pass a law saying that if a Mexican president signed any treaty under duress, meaning that they were forced to do so because they were captured, then that treaty would not be recognized by the Mexican government. Okay, so if any Mexican president ever signed a treaty under duress, that treaty is not going to be seen as legal by the Mexican government. And so that law is going to negate recognition of Texas independence, and so the Mexican government is not going to recognize the treaties of Velasco because the Mexican president, Santa Anna, was under duress at the time when he signed the treaties. And so Mexico is not accepting the independence of Texas. Santa Anna, though, was able to negotiate his release, but he doesn't follow through with the secret treaty, and the Mexican government does not recognize Texas independence.